Hello, everyone, and welcome to Thoughts and Theory Crafting. I'm Dick Tango, and today we're going to be talking about the best sniper loadouts for Call of Duty Warzone in Season 6. I'm going to be talking about the sniper rifles, as well as the secondaries to pair along with them in Overkill that'll give you the best chance at fights at all ranges, just making sure that they balance each other out very nicely. Quick reminder, I do stream on Twitch. There's a link down in the description, and I should be live after this video comes up. Be sure to check me out. I'd love to have you hang out and just get some good games in. And also in the description, there will be a link to truegamedata.com where I get all the stats for the videos that I make here, as well as just generally how I play. I love to have good stats information to take in, use that knowledge, as well as my experience in the game to get a feel for weapons and how to best build them. As you can see, the site provides these really great graphs when you put in your builds, your weapons and attachments that you prefer. This chart with all the stats here, as well as the graphs for time to kill and DPS. Incredibly useful stuff. Highly recommend you check them out. So definitely take a look. Again, the link is down in the description. So let's get started. I'm going to be covering 5 different loadouts today. These are a little bit mix and match. There's going to be 2 SMG secondary weapons and 3 AR secondary weapons, and then 2 marksman rifles and 2 sniper rifles. Total of 5 builds here. We're going to be doing first the Kar 98K. This is still, I think, the king of that close range, quick scope kind of style, but still effective at farther distances when you have the time to line up your shot. And I've got this paired currently with an MP5. Currently all my loadouts are going to be EOD, Overkill Amped, and then Ghost on the second loadout. Sometimes I will pick up Restock, but generally not when I'm running a sniper, because you're not really wanting to push when you're running a sniper loadout. That's usually best for when you have an AR and either a shotgun or an SMG that's really aimed for up-close combat. But I do run Semtex here. I do think this is the best explosive, though I think that it's worth having Thermite or C4 on a team just to take care of vehicles. And then I'm running Heartbeat, but you should work with your team to make sure you're not running too many of these. Stuns and even, to an extent, snapshot grenades can be very, very useful as well. But yeah, let's take a look at this Kar 98K real quick. So as you can see, I've got the monolithic suppressor, the Cingard custom 27.6-inch barrel, Tac Laser, sniper scope, and for perk, you can kind of go back and forth here between focus and sleight of hand. If you think you're having times where you really need extra shots in fights and you're having to take the time to reload, it is a lot slower with that sniper scope on there. Definitely go sleight of hand. But if you're more getting your shots off and really just want to make sure you're hitting them, focus is excellent because on marksman rifles, it is massively more effective at preventing aim flinch from when you get shot than it is for sniper rifles. So I definitely recommend this on marksman rifles if you're trying to challenge people who already know where you are and are just shooting as soon as you peek. This lets you just peek out and click them on the head, down them instantly, even though you're getting hit. Very, very valuable. Say if I was running this in solos or duos, I'd absolutely choose focus, but in trios or quads, sleight of hand definitely would edge it out, unless I really wanted to just challenge people that are holding those angles. And on the secondary here, I've got this MP5 here. This one's built for no hip fire. This is only going to be for ADS. As you see, I've got the Commando foregrip, which really helps the visual bounce, really makes it a very easy to use gun in that mid-range. And since you're using the Kar 98K at anything really above, say, 30-35 meters, fairly close with this build, especially if you're using the focus perk, then I really like having this mostly close range. I didn't go no stock here because it does affect the recoil so much. Tack Laser for the ADS speed, and then the monolithic integral suppressor, which is just the best for damage range and bullet velocity. Barely slower ADS than the muzzle attachment monolithic suppressor, and it does more for the range and bullet velocity. So definitely recommend this, and of course 45 round mags and sleight of hand. If I was running this in solos and maybe even duos, I might switch the sleight of hand for stippled. that might be enough when you're running duos. Personally, it's really nice to have the extra ability to put damage down range just by having both the 45 round mags and the sleight of hand on this MP5. We'll go ahead and take a look at the stats over here real quick. First, I want to just compare this MP5 to an MP7 here. As you can see, they trade damage pretty well. There's a little bit of a boost in several places for the MP5 versus the MP7, and it's important also to look at here these other stats. The MP5 and MP7 here. MP5 is going to have quicker ADS, quicker movement speed, a little slower on the ADS movement speed, and a little worse hip fire, but you're going to have your better reload, better damage per mag, better DPS in most ranges. So it's something that I really think fits the closest range because of that, a little bit of extra damage. But the MP7 is a little easier to hit at distance. So when you're running something that's just a little bit less capable in that like mid-range, then maybe going towards the MP7 is the way to go. And I'll go ahead and show you the next loadout here, which is going to be a kind of close quickscope SPR as well as an MP7 here. This SPR is using the Dragoon barrel, which gives you some damage range and bullet velocity, as well as silencing. I run that with Tack Laser, as well as the 208 Blitz for aim down sight speed, and this 208 Blitz stock also gives you sprint to fire and aim walking movement speed. Particularly the aim walking movement speed is useful for when you're wanting to peek out of cover quickly. That's going to allow you to hit those close-up shots as quickly as possible. This Sloan KR600 Feather lets you hit follow-up shots much quicker. It's got a significantly higher fire rate, especially with this, but even without, than the Kar98K, and your reload's going to be quicker. You don't have to run sleight of hand. So between the last attachments here, oops, I did not mean to have variable on there, but there's the normal scope. Between these last two attachments here, running Focus, which does the same thing for aim flinch, or this bolt assembly, the feather one, it's going to improve your rate of fire. Maybe play around with it and see how you feel about it. I tend for Focus, but I've been trying this and it does feel pretty good. This is going to be a very mid-range focus. It's going to be a little harder to use at your longer ranges. A good bit harder than especially like the HDR. So keep that in mind with this, but this is going to give you some really, really impressive burst damage, because even if you don't hit the headshot and you hit chest, you can hit in closer ranges, you can hit one in the chest and one in the stomach and kill, and even up to a pretty significant distance. Actually, I think all distances, yes, all distances, you're going to be able to hit 2 chest shots to kill. So even if you're missing headshots, you're breaking armor, and you're going to be able to kill with a second follow-up shot. That's what makes this a good bit more useful, and the same with the Kar98K, than, say, the HDR or AX50 in certain scenarios, in the mid-range especially. You're obviously going to still get the one-hit headshot if you do hit it, which the quick handling on this is going to make much simpler in those mid-ranges. So with that, I'm running this MP7, I'm running the monolithic suppressor, I'm running the FSS strike barrel. 2 reasons here. The recon increases your hip fire radius by a good amount. I think it's like 50-something%. And then it also increases your decreases your movement speed. And when you're running the secondary, you're going to be running with it out. And I really think having that extra movement speed is very nice. Tack Laser, again, for the ADS, it's just really hard to beat. Commando foregrip, again, for that better accuracy at range. I personally find that for guns that don't already have very little visual and side-to-side recoil, that reducing that is the most important thing for accuracy, because with vertical recoil, you can just drag down with your mouse, and that's going to make things a lot simpler. Or if you are on controller, just push down on the stick, and that's how you're going to control your recoil. Those are very predictable, but the side-to-side bounce and the visual can make it very, very hard to hit targets. This 50-round mag I've chosen just because it's about a 2.9, I think, percent move speed difference. That with the shorter barrel makes this a much more mobile gun. It's going to make it a lot easier to ditch in and out of buildings and around, since you're not going to have the kind of firepower that your normal like shotgun loadouts or your hipfire MP5 is in those super close range combat situations. This extra mobility really helps step up. You can still run the 60 mag, or you can still run the recon, but keep in mind that the recon's going to hurt your hipfire a lot, as well as the movement speed, and that the 60 mag's going to hurt your movement speed as well. So I tend to stick with this one here. It's still very decent at range. As you saw previously, it trades ranges with the MP5 in terms of time to kill. It's just a very, very easy to use gun. I feel like I do very well with the MP7 just because it feels nice. It's very easy to control. It does a lot of kind of harder to quantify things very nicely, as well as having pretty solid stats all around. So yeah, you can see here the comparison between these two close range guns, and then the more close range snipers, as well as the two pairings for it that don't extend as much into the mid range, especially in the damage department, as these next several will here. So next one we're going to look at here is the SPR again, which I'm going to be running at the max range possible. This is going to be almost the max range possible. So the Lapua rounds really do not seem worth it. There's a video that True Game Data did on the YouTube channel, it's the same thing, True Game Data, about the Norma and Lapua rounds right after they fixed the hit scan issue. The Norma rounds have less bullet drops than the Lapua at a fairly modest penalty to the bullet velocity compared to the Lapua, as well as having much quicker ADS. So I really think that the Norma rounds are the way to go. Less bullet drop makes it just easier to hit your shots, and still a very respectable bullet velocity, almost as much as the HDR with the SPR 26-inch barrel and the monolithic suppressor. Since we're maximizing our range, of course, we're going to use the longest barrel as well as the monolithic suppressor. And then I'm running the variable zoom scope because it's only a tiny, tiny penalty to your ADS speed compared to the SPR 28mm. But keep in mind the first range is like 3.5 times, which is pretty small. That's like a scout optic. And it still glints in that closest range. So you might just want to stick with the SPR, which is going to give you a little bit more reliability with your prediction of bullet drop as well, because when you're changing the zoom, you have to go different amounts visually on your screen, even in the same distance, to account for bullet drops. So that might be something to consider, but give it a try with both. They're both very good scopes, so definitely give it a shot. And then, of course, I've got the Tac Laser here. I'm running Tac Laser on virtually all of these guns because on the closer range guns, if you don't want it to show, you don't ADS. And when you're going to shoot, you ADS, and it shows within the closer ranges, which is, I think, worth the benefit of aiming stability, aim walking steadiness, which is really nice. It lets you hit shots easier while you're strafing and makes you harder to hit, since while you're strafing, you're hitting your shots better. As well, of course, the aim down sight boost to these guns with the Tac Laser is excellent. Usually the best, or about the same as like no stock, or a little better even. So yeah, it's very, very good. I'm pairing this with the AS Val. This gun has an absolutely absurd time to kill. It is unbelievable. It does come with some significant drawbacks. Very high recoil, very low bullet velocity, small mag size that goes away because of the high fire rate very quickly, and then you're going to want to run sleight of hand because you can only go up to a 30 round mag with attachments. This build I'm playing with a little bit back and forth between the 200mm barrel, which is going to give you bullet velocity and damage range, which helps you in the mid range. When you're running with something like this maxed range SPR or like an HDR, I do recommend it because it's going to give you the best chance of hitting your shots, especially on moving targets in the mid-range. Personally, with the recoil, I've been playing around with different attachments, and I find the Strelok feels the best. It does also give you aim stability and aim walking steadiness, both of which are huge. This gun naturally has a very good strafe speed, so benefiting you by stacking this aim walking steadiness so that you can strafe while shooting, again, is going to be very, very, very helpful. So when you're in a gunfight, you're going to be harder to hit while also still being able to hit your shots reliably. And for the same reasons there, the Tac Laser that's going to give you an ADS boost, as well as the aiming stability and aim walking steadiness. So yeah, the other way to run this gun, I think, if you're running like with the Kar98K, take off the barrel, put on stipple grip tape, or you can even run operator foregrip and the skeleton stock. The skeleton stock's going to boost your aim walking movement speed and your ADS. And then the operator foregrip is going to have the no penalty to your movement speeds versus the other foregrips. So that's the way I'd be running the AS Val. And then let's go ahead and take a look at the other two long-range snipers. I'll just talk about those together. That's going to be your HDR and your AX50. The big drawback about these guns is that they do not do a 2-shot to the chest kill, so you're going to need to be clicking on heads. The HDR is definitely my preferred here. Going to be maxing out the range with the HDR Pro Barrel, the monolithic suppressor, and then the Tac Laser to boost your ADS. I've got the variable zoom on here, but that's just because I really like the ability to zoom in extra to shoot the very long range shots, because this gun has very, very, very little bullet drop. It's going to let you hit these long range shots very, very well. If you do run the default scope on it, which is completely fine, I definitely recommend the FTAC Stalker Scout stock here, which is going to boost your ADS the next most. I personally run sleight of hand on these because I would rather have the sleight of hand, the quicker reload, versus slowing down my ADS and move speed, mostly the ADS, with the larger magazines. Though with the HDR, if you really want to run an extended mag, I recommend the 7-round. It's a much smaller penalty than the 9-round mag, and it's going to give you those 2 extra shots, which may be the difference between getting your kill and not. So those would be the 2 builds that I would go for the HDR. For the AX50, I personally am not a big fan of this gun, but I know a lot of people swear by it. I'm definitely going to be running the maximum damage range to reduce the bullet drop and increase the bullet velocity as well for easier shots at range when targets are moving especially. So monolithic suppressor, the longest barrel, always Tac Laser here. I don't use Tac Laser nearly as much in some of my other loadouts, but I find it really fits sniper loadouts on both the primary and secondary weapons very well. And then the Cingard Arms Assassin, it's going to be the biggest ADS boost you can get out of any other attachment. It is significantly higher than stippled grip tape. So definitely be going with that one. And then I personally would run sleight of hand here, though you can also do the variable zoom scope, or you can go with a higher round magazine as well. Personally, again, sleight of hand makes the big difference for me. And with the AX50, since it doesn't have quite the same properties of hitting really far shots like the HDR does, since you're going to be having to account for the bullet drop and bullet velocity more, I don't really think it's very worth it to run that variable zoom scope. And I think boosting your ADS speed with this stock is more important. So that's why I've been going those attachments. For the secondaries here, we've already covered, of course, the 2 SMGs and then the AS Val. But I'm going to look at this Ram 7 here, and then as well as that as CR56 AMAX. This has been a great deal of testing and messing around with builds to come up with this RAM. I think this is absolutely the build. I was running with the operator foregrip, which does give you better movement speed, but the RAM really benefits from the recoil stabilization. I highly recommend you check out the video on True Game Data's site about recoil stabilization versus recoil control. Very enlightening, especially with the RAM in particular. So definitely check that out. And then I'm using the Forge Tack Eclipse barrel. The reason I don't use the Ranger barrel here is because of the move speed penalty. It's pretty significant, but if you aren't so worried about the move speed penalty, it gives you a nice amount, like a very significant amount of recoil control, which makes this thing a complete laser. At that point, though, I do think that this gun is a little too slow and too difficult to operate in close range. To be running with a sniper when you run it with a Ranger barrel. You are very much limiting yourself if you ever get in a close range situation by using the longer range attachments in general. And I never run any like VLKs or, I mean, you could run like a red dot, but I wouldn't even recommend a hollow with these because it's just not worth it compared to having the ability to most easily track close range targets. Because you're going to have to fight close range sometimes. You can't control every fight that well. But still, the Forge Tack Eclipse here is going to give you bullet velocity and damage range at the cost of some ADS, but not a ton, and no penalty to move speed. Tac Laser, again, for the aiming stability, the aim walking stability, and of course the aim down sight speed. And then 50 round mags, of course. You're just going to want as many bullets in this gun as you can. Unfortunately, you can't get a 60 mag, but yeah, 50 round for sure. You could run Tac Suppressor on here. You don't necessarily need the extra boost to damage range and bullet velocity when you're running the gun like this, so if you feel like you want a little better aim down sight, personally don't think it's as worth, but if you do have issues with the aim down sight speed, swap it out for the tactical suppressor and see how you like it. And the same applies for my build on the CR56 here. I've got the monolithic suppressor, no barrel attachment here, the Tac Laser, of course for the same reasons, the CR56 EXO here, this is going to be your equivalent of a skeleton stock, which is going to do wonders for your aim walking movement speed and ADS. This makes it much easier to be strafing around corners, and again, competing in fights where people are shooting back, making yourself harder to hit. You could theoretically run the no stock. I think it's too difficult to control at range with no stock on it, but give it a try. If you have no problems with it, if you're reliably hitting shots at the ranges that your sniper cannot operate in, go no stock. It's a very, very good attachment because it does reduce your move speed and then your ADS by a good amount. I use Commando here, again, for the same reasons. I find that despite the AMAX having a lot of vertical kick, that's still easier to control than its visual bounce and its side-to-side bounce. So I go Commando, and then the 45-round magazine, of course, just the most bullets you can possibly get. Maybe if you were running in solos, going 30 rounds in sleight of hand. And then, of course, if you want a little bit better boost to your range, or a little better boost to your ADS, it's going to cost you some range, but going tactical suppressor is an option. Going back over to the stats here, keep in mind that with the CR56, you're running a fairly low bullet velocity. So it's the same as the MP5. It's not ASVAL bad, but if you go away from the monolithic and you go tactical suppressor, that's going to suffer even more. As you can see here, when we compare the MP5 and MP7, they're going to be very, very similar across the board. You get a little better movement speed out of this particular MP7 build, as well as the ADS movement speed. And then I think it's easier to use at range because of the recoil properties, and also has better hip fire, better bullet velocity, which isn't going to matter as much when you're running these SMGs. A little slower reload, but the bigger magazine size can make up for that. They're really, really close in terms of damage and maneuverability. They're very, very, very similar guns when you're not just focusing on the very closest range. I do think that I would run the MP7 in most cases, but if you prefer the MP5, absolutely go for it. As far as the three ARs here, the ASVAL is definitely the outlier here. This one I've got showing the stipple grip tape, but again, you can go with the longer barrel. It just kind of depends on how you're playing it. None of the ARs really have hip fire that are worth relying on outside of just right in front of you. If you're barrel stuffing someone, then sure, hip fire, but don't rely on it like you can with SMGs. What you're going to get out of these ARs, you can see here, here are the MP7 and MP5, and let's show you the RAM AMAX. Anything past this, say, 10 to 14 meter range, you're going to get much better DPS and time to kill out of these two ARs. They kind of trade blows here. The CR56 has the better, closest, and longest range damage, but keep in mind you're not going to likely be using these guns past here at 63 meters. So really just kind of trading blows and damage. I would go by feel. The CR56 is a little easier on your ammo as well. Keep that in mind. But then let's throw in the ASVAL. Again, this time to kill is absurd. If you look at the MP5's best time to kill, and this is no matter what you use to build it with, the best time to kill you get out of an MP5 here is this 0.527 seconds in the closest range. You beat that by about 0.11 seconds with the ASVAL. All of these guns are slower by a notable amount than the ASVAL. The ASVAL keeps this range up to about 32 meters higher if you go with the extended barrel, and then still has a killer time to kill, barely slower than the MP5's best, all the way out as far as you can continue hitting shots, which really gets difficult in like 50, 60 meter range. It's very, very difficult. But still, the damage on this thing is insane. So the way the ASVAL competes at all is by its damage, because it has very many drawbacks otherwise. Recoil, the attachment options that you're able to go because you need sleight of hand and the 30-round mag, and then of course just having 30 rounds. It's a lot less damage per mag. It's a lot less time shooting. So when you're trying to kind of keep people behind targets or just really make space for another teammate, you're going to run through your ammo quicker and need to reload more as well. So those are the 5 sniper pairings that I think are the best. And then real quick, I'll go over the stats for the snipers themselves. As you can see, the AX50 and HDR have the highest penalty or the highest ADS time. Makes it very, very difficult to use these in closer ranges. So these are really true long-range weapons. Pair them with a medium-range weapon accordingly. I don't want to see people running HDRs with an MP5, and I don't want to see people running HDRs with a VLK Grau either, though, because those guns both excel at longer ranges. Then moving over, of course, to comparing these bullet velocities. The AX50 has very good bullet velocity, but the bullet drop is much, much higher than the HDR, which is why I generally prefer the HDR at those ranges. Though it's worth noting, the AX50 is much quicker ADS, depending on how you build it. It's really hard to get as good of an ADS on an HDR. This in-between, currently True Game Data has not put up the Norma rounds yet, but keep in mind that it's going to be a little lower when you actually build this SPR out. Going to be a bit better for ADS, and it's going to be a little slower for the bullet velocity. And then with a Norma, you're going to have less bullet drop than the AX50, but notably more than the HDR. So this is a kind of a good all-arounder because it's notably quicker for ADS and the other mobility stats here, especially the ADS movement speed, way higher on the SPR. And then on the Kar98K, and SPR that we're running the normal rounds on, the standard rounds on for the closer ranges. As you can see, this SPR has worse bullet velocity, but better ADS. And it's going to have worse bullet drop than the Kar98K with this build too, but quicker reload, and the ability to not have to run not run sleight of hand and still get that quick reload. And then you can also run a 10-round mag if you really want. The other big thing is the higher fire rate. The fire rate on the SPR, especially with the Featherbolt, is significantly higher than the Kar98K. So if you're really just trying to keep putting bullets down range, the SPR is the way to go. Whereas the Kar98K still gives you an easier time competing at longer ranges while having great mobility compared to this SPR. So there's kind of a few options in how you build these, but give it a feel. Try out different guns, see how you like them. I really encourage you to try out the Ram 7 and the CR56 for those mid-range builds. They're both very, very manageable. What makes them kind of hard to use at very long ranges, the high recoil properties, does not affect you nearly as much when you're not running the zoom optic, when you're not trying to hit targets at very far distances. The Ram is my favorite gun in the game. It is absolutely excellent. And don't let people scare you about the recoil. If you haven't tried it, the recoil is rather manageable, depending on how you build the gun. It does go up and to the left, which can be hard to account for, but give it some practice, see if you can run it. So yeah, those are my builds here. Definitely give it a shot. Comment if you have any ideas about how you'd rather run your guns. Let me know if you like the video by giving a like or dislike rating. And be sure to subscribe for more great content. Feel free to leave any feedback as well. And I'll be getting on shortly here, so definitely stop by the stream, again, at twitch.tv/DickTango. Thanks, and have a wonderful day.